Three MCs repping Brooklyn, New York would get together and form a super group called the Crooklyn Dodgers. This group consisted of Buckshot representing Black Moon and the Boot Camp Clique, Special Ed and Masta Ace representing the Juice Crew and Masta Ace Incorporated. This is a look of behind the scenes of how the group got together and how they made one of hip hop's all-time anthems. Masta Ace will be the veteran of the Crooklyn Dodgers. We first seen Masta Ace back in 1988 rolling with the Juice Crew. He would then roll into the early 90s with his own crew called Masta Ace Incorporated. Special Ed was also another veteran out of the Crooklyn Dodgers. Now, Special Ed dropped his first album in 1989. This album not only was a classic debut, he also was only 17 years old when this album dropped. So by the time the Crooklyn Dodgers were formed, he was still a young MC in the game. The final key member to the all-star crew, the Crooklyn Dodgers, is Buckshot. We all know Buckshot is the leader of the Boot Camp Clique, and just like Special Ed, Buckshot was very young when he first arrived on the hip-hop scene, with Black Moon dropping their classic debut Into the Stage. Buckshot was only 19 years old at this time. The Crooklyn Dodgers supergroup of MCs is just one element. The other element is the city of Brooklyn and its historical impact on the hip-hop culture. And that final element to bring it all together is the one and only iconic film director Spike Lee. Now, who's more Brooklyn than Spike Lee? Now, Spike would make his first historic filming run in the late 80s with iconic films like Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X, to name a few. The shoe culture is as key to hip-hop as turntables and graffiti. Spike would team up with Michael Jordan, who at that time was bigger than life. Both Spike and Michael Jordan would record some of the most iconic and best Nike commercials of all time. Spike Lee's first debut into hip-hop actually came while he was still a film student at NYU. Spike Lee directed the unofficial video for Melly Mel's White Lines while he was still in college. There would be two key films in 1994 and 1995, Crooklyn and Clockers. Both films were based out of Brooklyn, New York. Now, Crooklyn would be very important because Crooklyn was supposed to be a film about a family and what life was like in Brooklyn in the 70s. What Spike Lee was able to capture with the movie Crooklyn was a snapshot of time before gentrification, before drugs, before violence, before $1 Million brownstones. Spike Lee was able to show what life was like in Brooklyn from his perspective and the perspective of people around him. The key to the film Clockers was it dropped 1 year after Crooklyn because of the timestamps. Now, if you go back to Crooklyn, it showed the city of Brooklyn around the summer of 73, 74. Now, 20 years later, the film Clockers was around the summertime of maybe around 93 or 94 in the mid 90s. Now, this showed a completely different depiction of the city of Brooklyn because now you have alcohol, you have liquor stores, you have gun violence, and you have heavy drug dealing. So this would follow young men who got into the drug game, and then it would also show how the cycle would continue because in several scenes they would show young kids that were following along and that were almost being groomed to become the same drug dealers and continue the cycle of gun violence and drug selling. So these were two key films in the 90s, which would also have two key soundtracks with two anthems, and one of them being the Crooklyn Dodgers from the Crooklyn film. Movie soundtracks were a key part to not just hip-hop, but just to music in general. Spike Lee wanted to do a soundtrack for Crooklyn, but not necessarily a hip-hop soundtrack because back then the film was centered around the early 70s before hip-hop was prevalent. But Spike Lee did say he did want to have one hip-hop track on that soundtrack for Crooklyn, and he wanted to reach out to one of his favorite producers, Q-Tip. When Spike Lee was talking to Q-Tip, he also had two requests. Spike Lee said he wanted a Brooklyn anthem, and he wanted to recreate the atmosphere of the film Crooklyn. Now, Q-Tip, as we all know, is a part of one of the greatest hip hop groups of all time, A Tribe Called Quest, and Q-Tip being one of the best producers of all time as well. Q-Tip said that Spike Lee called me and asked me to do it. He just said he wanted Brooklyn MCs. So we had a screening of the movie, and we had Old Dirty Bastard, Masta Ace, Special Ed, and Buckshot, a couple other MCs. We was watching the movie, and ODB got up after 10 minutes and was like, "Man, ain't nobody getting shot in this movie," and he walked out. So it was just the MCs that was left after that got on the record. Buckshot said that Spike wanted to put together a project, and I believe he put together the team himself. He went after everybody. He specifically knew what he wanted. To my knowledge, he said, "I want a team to represent Brooklyn, but conscious Brooklyn." There was no direction from Spike Lee about what the song should be about. He just said, "This is a song representing Brooklyn, and Crooklyn Dodgers is the project." Special Ed said it was Q-Tip or someone from his camp who got in touch with me. Q-Tip produced the track, and I guess he was given the task of putting together some of Brooklyn's finest, and that's how we all got chosen for the role. It was obvious it was a Brooklyn anthem. Spike Lee didn't say what the song was going to be like, but he was hands-on, and he did come to my studio, the Dollar Cab Lab. Buckshot said that Spike Lee himself came down at the time, and Q-Tip, who produced the track, he came down and had Black Moon's DJ and producer Evo D, who also assisted Q-Tip on the boards. Evo D loved the song. He actually helped Q-Tip out on the beat. So certain things you could hear on the beat, he added, and certain other things on the beat, Q-Tip added. They kind of worked together. The drums was extra hard on the stuff because Q-Tip was great on that, but Evil was really crazy at other things. Special Ed would go on to say, it was kind of like a group session as opposed to just come in, lay a verse, and now here's the track. I think we finalized it in the Dollar Cab Lab, and Tip might have added some touches later, but we all had input because Tip is not like a controlling producer. He'll ask for an honest opinion. We were all creatively involved. It was just a matter of having Tip helming it as a producer, and we respected that. We all contributed to the hook. Even Action Love, which was Special Ed's DJ, contributed on that hook. Black Moon member DJ Evo D. Buckshot went in and did his verse like boom, boom, boom. Everybody was like, "Oh shit." When that happened, it was like, we need a chorus for the record. I was like, why don't y'all scratch the chorus? Someone said, maybe you should scratch the chorus. I took the song home. The scratches were Guru and Gangstars, The Place Where We Dwell, and Black Moon's Who's Got the Props. Back then, I used to listen to records to learn the rhymes. When they said the record was Crooklyn, I thought of the Guru verse first. When he said, never taking shorts because Brooklyn's the borough, I was like, yo, that right there is ill. But then later on that day, I wound up remembering Who Got the Props says straight from Crooklyn, better known as Brooklyn. So I tried to combine the two. Those lines were my only choices. It worked. And actually, Spike Lee is the one that put the baseball samples in the record at the start and the end. So you could say that Spike produced it also. Masta Ace. So Masta Ace said the beat did change a lot when the final mix happened, but the biggest change was the lyrics. We did the song, we came back into a bigger studio, I forgot which one it was, and we did the song, and then Spike Lee was actually there, and he listened to the lyrics we did, and it was just really us rapping, you know, being dope or whatever, just lyrical rap verses. He said that he felt that we needed to see the movie and that the song needed to reflect more of what the theme of the movie was, which was the 70s. So we left the studio that day and he set up a screening of the movie. We went to a very small screening studio and we watched the movie way before it came out. And after we watched the movie, for me, the ideas really started to come together as far as what I wanted to talk about. We went back on a later date and re-recorded to reflect the theme of the movie. Buckshot. I grew up on Tapscott Street, 51 Tapscott. I grew up in Brownsville too. I bigged up all the places that I lived at. I said peace to CI and the Bush. I grew up in Coney Island for a couple of years, 33rd Street between Surf and Mermaid Avenues. I had my share of being all around Brooklyn. My first memory on Tapscott was meeting the local neighborhood drug dealers. And one of them used to like my sister, so he let me hang out in the spot. That's when I first started learning about, hey, wait a minute, these streets are kind of real, yo. I grew up a lot of places, but Tapscott was the first place where I was chilling all day in the drug spot type shit. I'm not bigging that up, but it showed me that I wasn't where I wanted to be at, and I got a chance to have that experience early. Hot peas and butter, that was a game that we all used to play in the neighborhood. We played a few games like Skelly, Tag, and Hot Peas and Butter, where a person got to catch a skill. I think in the neighborhood, we all grew up with skill games. All those games was a part of my upbringing. I just chose Hot Peas and Butter because it rhymed with Sutter. Masta Ace. Well, about a year after that record came out, Spike Lee approached us about doing an entire album. He had a deal with MC8 that he somehow brokered, and the idea was to bring the Crooklyn Dodgers as a group to MCA and do a full album. That would be mostly produced by Q-Tip and Shahid Ali Muhammad. It was a great idea and a great opportunity, and both me and Special Ed were 100% down to do it. But Buckshot wasn't as enthusiastic about doing it. He had just inked a deal with his Duck Down label with Priority, and I guess the label was growing very fast, and he didn't feel like he had the time to put into it. So he basically was the one who decided not to do it. I even went to him personally and tried to talk to him into doing the project, but he politely declined. The supergroup, the Crooklyn Dodgers, never completed a full album. This song was a moment in history, a Brooklyn anthem, and still one of the best hip hop songs of all time, not only from a production standpoint, but also from a lyrical standpoint. The major success of the original Crooklyn Dodgers, Spike Lee's next film in 1995, Clockers, would have a soundtrack and would feature three new Brooklyn MCs, OC, Chubb Rock, and J. Rue the Damager, which would be the Crooklyn Dodgers 1995. Both songs are super classics, and it's very hard to say which one is better, but both songs have equal impact.